2025 will be yet another year without Conor McGregor in a UFC fight. In a UFC fight.
Yeah, I know.
Because I know what happened last week in the news, and we can touch on it with the whole Logan Paul thing. But this will be we will not see Conor in a UFC fight this year.
I'm gonna say overreaction because as backwards and messed up as it sounds, I feel like this whole situation he just went through almost makes it more likely that he's gonna fight.
The comeback story, right?
It's already called the greatest comeback in combat sports history, and that was just what him and his team were calling it based off the leg injury. But man, this guy needs some positive PR in his favor, like whatever it may be, and going in there and winning a fight. We've seen before how that can change just the entire outlook in the snap of a finger. So there's a secondary question of who could he come back and fight and beat? That's a whole other thing. But I do think even him going through the fight week process, all that stuff, you get the right dance partner. If you go back to Michael Chandler, I don't think he's going to be throwing everything that he's just endured back in his face as like part of the promotion of the fight. I think the Pauls would absolutely do that. So I'd be a little surprised if he wanted to kind of enter into that whole situation at the moment, but we can touch on that. But as far as a UFC fight, I do think he will effort his best and the UFC will try. It's just a question of like, where is his personal life at? Can he get through a training camp sober and healthy and all that stuff? There's a lot of concern around it, but if he doesn't fight this year and if he can't pull it together to a degree on the back end of this, whether you want to call it a wake-up call or reality check, whatever, then you got to kind of say it's a lost cause. So I guess optimistically, I feel like the table has been set for a comeback, but man, like, I don't know. I said at my bold predictions for the start of 2024, we would get one combined John Jones and Conor McGregor fight. That ended up being exactly on point, but we were scheduled for more than that. So I don't know. As I look to 25 and probably do that same point on my column, it might be one combined fight for them again, honestly.
Yeah. Okay. So if for everyone who followed the news last week, Conor saying that he'd agreed to a fight in a boxing exhibition against Logan Paul in India, right? Let's just say that happens. And it does feel like there is actual conversations about that happening. At least we had follow-up reports. I know Ariel Helwani had talked about it on his show. Usually a good gauge of whether or not something is at least being seriously talked about or not, right?
Yep.
If that were to somehow happen, and I'm not sure what the timing would be, if it would be in Q1 or whatever the case is. If that was the thing that Dana White hinted at too, right? Which also gives it a little bit more life that it's possible. That presumably is a boxing exhibition in which Conor probably gets paid more than he would ever make from a single UFC fight. What would be the motivation to come back and fight later in the year, though, if he already made a bunch of money from this Logan Paul exhibition that didn't require him to go through, a rigorous training camp? Mm-hmm. That's kind of where I'm thinking too. Like, if that plays out, how would he really come and fight in the UFC later in the year?
Maybe, I don't know. I guess, do they come to an agreement saying if we allow you to do this, you have to come back to us and fight us?
Could they build that in? I guess it's just a TKO thing because Logan Paul is a WWE wrestler as well. Mm-hmm. I suppose they could build that in.
Actually, now that I think back to your initial question, I'm almost kind of talking myself out of it if it was an overreaction, because there's the whole TV element of this thing with the UFC, right? And people thought even midway through this year that they're trying to push Conor late in the game. So whoever they're negotiating with, they can say, we have 1 to 2 Conor McGregor fights under our deal we can give you. So maybe this is part of that. They're like, hey, we let you do this boxing match with Logan Paul mid-year, and then you got to fight for us in January of 26 to kick off our new TV deal, or like something like that. So maybe that's how the cards shake out. But yeah, like I would imagine the UFC isn't just going to let him do this, scot-free, and then there's no obligations to come back. Of course, he could agree to a fight and get injured again, or something else could happen. But I do think that would be part of like the concession to do it. And I do think Conor, part of him, I have to think, just knowing how he's spoken over the years, like he does not want the last image of him in the octagon being stretchered out with a broken leg. So I do think we get him back at some point along the line. Dana White says it's going to be end of year. So even if it is a fight, it seems it is not going to happen anytime soon. And there is a lifetime of runway when it comes to Conor McGregor between now and then. So that's a little bit scary too.
All right, Mike. Well, I guess we'll see what happens with Conor McGregor. I don't know. I don't know that I just don't see him coming back next year. But you know, like, yeah, Conor McGregor being rolled out on a stretcher is not the visual that he would want to finish on. You do have a point there, but he's got a lot of money. He's rich. Dana White has told us that he's rich, and that's why he's not going to come back, Mike. I just can't see why he would do that, but I guess we'll see how it shakes out.
MMA Junkie AI.